Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to have a few minutes to talk to you and give a bit of an introduction about organic certification. So the first thing to know about organic certification is this allows a farmer to sell their product as organic. Organic is a federally regulated term, so if you're going to use the word organic or the organic seal, you have to follow the rules. And so the certification demonstrates that these farmers are following national organic standards. Now, why is it important to have national organic standards? Well, back in the 80s, we didn't have national organic standards, and there were multiple standards, and they often conflicted. And so consumers really had no idea what they were getting. And so this led Congress in 1990 to pass the Organic Foods Production Act, and they asked USDA to administer these standards. And so we've been doing that now for 10 years, and so we're kind of at the role at this point that we're refining the existing standards and then writing additional ones for specialty products like pet food and that sort of thing. Organic certification does support the environment. For example, an organic farmer has to demonstrate that they're maintaining or improving the health of their soil. And additionally, organic certification provides economic opportunities for farmers. This is mostly because they do typically get premium prices for their organic products. And to illustrate this, I want to tell a story about a former combat vet named Mike, who, as a decorated Marine, he came back from war and he really had a hard time re-engaging into civilian life, and he was actually homeless for a couple of years. And he went through this program called the Veteran Sustainable Agriculture Training, where they teach farmers how to grow organic hydroponics and also to write a business plan. And through this program, Mike has now marketed an organic hot sauce called Forager Mike's Hot Sauce, which is now for sale in supermarkets. So this is an example of how these premium prices can help pull someone out of a not great situation. Additionally, organic management can also reduce farm workers' exposure to synthetic pesticides and other prohibited substances. So what can be certified? Well, it's a very wide scope of things that can be certified, anything from crops, wild crops, livestock, and processed or multi-ingredient products. And each of these categories have different standards that talk about how those products can be produced and handled. So what are some of the requirements? The first thing that farmers really need to be aware of is that they can't apply prohibited substances to the land for 3 years directly preceding the harvest of the crop. So there is this transition period, and that's important for farmers to factor into their planning and decision making. So typically the general rule for prohibited substances is if it's a natural substance, it's allowed unless we say it isn't. An example of that is arsenic. And if it is a synthetic substance, it is prohibited unless we say it's allowed. An example of that is baking soda. So if we didn't allow baking soda, there would be no organic bread. So the next important requirement is that the farmer has to write an organic system plan, which is going to talk about what substances they're going to use on their farm and how they're going to manage their farm in an environmentally friendly manner. For example, how are they going to deal with the pests on their farm since they're going to have less access to various substances? And how are they going to rotate their crops and other sustainable agricultural practices? So if farmers do not follow these requirements, they are subject to compliance and enforcement action. We have a whole compliance and enforcement team which receives complaints when people suspect that people aren't following the rules, and we fully vet those. And if we find that, in fact, they didn't follow the rules, we can take away their organic certification, and or we can also make them pay fines per violation. So it is important that farmers follow the rules. So the next question that we often get from folks is, okay, so how does this process work? So the first thing that they need to do is select a certifying agent. And there are currently 87 certifying agents, and they are located anywhere around the U.S. and throughout the world. Typically, sometimes they're state departments of agriculture or other organizations. And And these groups, they are accredited by USDA, and it's their job to make sure that farmers and businesses are following all of the rules. And so this review process, first they review the written organic system plan that describes how the farmer is going to manage their farm. And then once they're satisfied with that, they will have a qualified inspector come out to the farm and make sure that the farmer is actually following that approved plan. And then before they grant certification, they're also going to review the records on the farm, and they're also going to review all the marketing materials to make sure that the seal and all the various marketing statements are being used appropriately. So now everyone's favorite question is, well, that sounds great, but how much is all of this going to cost? And really, it depends. If it is a small farm that has a limited scope, it could be something like a few $100s, whereas if it's a large farm and say they have crops and livestock, it can be in the few $1,000 range. So it really depends. And there are various programs that USDA has to help farmers get technical and financial assistance, and we'll get to that in a minute. Once a farmer is certified, they do have access to a few different international markets with Canada, the European Union, and a few others. And pretty much all farms have to be certified organic. The only exception is if they gross $5,000 or less per year, and then they are actually exempt from certification. They still do have to maintain records, but they don't have to write an organic system plan, and they don't have to actually get certified. And so I wanted to give an example to kind of put this in perspective of how this actually works. So we're going to give an example of organic cheddar cheese. So initially, we have, in order to produce organic milk, we're going to start with organic cows. And these cows must graze on certified organic pasture for the entire grazing season, which has to be at least 120 days per year. These cows have to eat 100% organic feed, which can't come from genetically modified sources. They cannot be treated with antibiotics at any point. They can't be treated with synthetic growth hormones or really any growth hormones. And so then once we have this organic milk from these organic cows, this facility needs to be recertified every year. And this recertification will have yet another on-site inspection, and they have to renew their fees at that point. And when the inspector comes to that farm, the types of things that they're going to be looking for is they're going to be looking at how are the animals being sourced, how are they maintaining the pasture health, how are they maintaining the health of their animals, how are they dealing with manure runoff on the farm. And so at this point, we have our organic milk, and so it's going to be transported to the certified organic cheese facility in a clean truck. At that point, they're going to add rennet to the milk, and the rennet can be from animal and non-animal sources. And that's another example of a substance that doesn't have to be organic. And so at that point, we have organic cheese. And this facility also, their certification has to be renewed every year. And at that facility, the inspector would be looking at things like how are they sourcing their ingredients, how are they making sure that the truck is clean, how are they keeping any non-organic cheese separate from the organic cheese at the facility, and those sorts of things. So if you're interested in learning more about organic certification, we invite you to visit the Organic Literacy Initiative. And this looks at things like, it has a couple different training modules. One is 15 minutes and one is 30 minutes and gets a little bit more into detail than what I went over today. There's also a resource guide which lists all the different programs across USDA that are available to organic producers and how they may use them. And finally, it has some outreach materials, including this brochure, Is Organic an Option for Me? And you can access all of these materials at www.ams.usda.gov/organic info. Thank you so much for your time.